Almost everything in a SharePoint site exists within either a list or a library. So all the data that is contained, those are the containers, lists and libraries. In fact, a library is actually just a specialized type of a list that just includes support for documents. So really, lists are the primary mechanism for storing data in SharePoint. And they also provide the primary structural elements of a site. A good way to think of what lists are is they're similar to database tables in that they can consist of fields and they're often rectangular. But a given list could support more than one type of content, and it could be jagged. It could include folders. It could have a hierarchy. So in those respects, it's not like a database table. And lists are based on a template. So just as you would have a schema for a database table, that's kind of what the template is. It's a schema for your list. And you could have one or more content types. And content types are another type of schema that can be associated to a list. And obviously, in your list, you could have one or more fields. So lists also have one or more views. And so the views are just how the list is displayed. It can have the column order, sort order, that type of thing. Another thing that's interesting about lists is that the template that we're talking about that defines the lists, it also can define the forms that you use to view and edit the items in the list, and also event handlers that act on that data. So really, a given list template is actually like an application unto itself. And in fact, in SharePoint 2013, that's what they're called. There's no longer adding a list to creating a new list in SharePoint. You're really just adding an app and then an app of type list. So lists support multiple views of the data, and you can decide what columns you want to include in the view, the order of the columns, meaning which columns show up from the left to the right, just like you would in a table or a query on a database table. You can also determine the sort order. You can do grouping on a particular field. You can do filters. And then there's also lots of different view styles. So there's the standard list view, which most people are familiar with, where it's just kind of like a grid, like a standard ASP.NET grid or web grid. And then there's the data sheet, which allows inline editing in the list. And then there's also special views for calendar view for a calendar type of list, and then a Gantt view for a list that would represent tasks in a project. And lists also contain forms for working with list items. And the different forms are the all item forms. All items, there's the display form when you look at an individual item. And then the new, so when you go to add a new item to a list, this is the form that shows up. Or if you go to edit an item in a list, then the edit form would show up. And these forms are customizable, and you can also use other types of forms too. You could substitute InfoPath, or you could create your own ASP.NET forms if you wanted to. So every time you create a view, a new form is being created for this display of the items. So in this way, the form elements depend on the view. So your basic list form really just consists of a mechanism to consume the columns and emit them for the form based on the list configuration, right down to what goes on the ribbon. And forms are customized. You can use InfoPath, You can use SharePoint Designer to customize the forms. You could swap them out. You could make your own ASP.NET form if you wanted to. So all of the lists inside of SharePoint have these based list types. So think of this as it's an inheritance hierarchy, and they all derive from one of the following base types. One is the generic list or document library, and so the document library actually derives from the generic lists and adds a few extra things that have to do with documents. And then there's a discussion forum that adds features for doing discussions. And then there's a vote or survey type, and then an issues list. But all at the root of everything is the generic list. And again, the document library is just another type of list with added functionality. So in SharePoint Foundation 2013, these are the list types. We have libraries. You can have document libraries. You have form libraries, wiki pages. We can store pictures. Then there's communications. So we have announcements. You can store contacts, discussion boards. For tracking, we can have a list of links. Calendar, that's for, we talked about the calendar list view previously. And project tasks, we talked about the Gantt chart view that would be associated with that type of list, as well as project tasks. Issue tracking, and surveys. And then there's the custom lists. And so as developers, a lot of times if you're going to be storing data in SharePoint, most of the time you're going to be creating custom lists. Now we'll take a look at how we actually create and use lists. Okay, we're logged into a Windows 8 client right now going against our SharePoint server. And I'm going to go ahead and create a list. So I'm going to the site contents. And before, how I was talking about, those list templates have so much functionality in them, they're almost like an application unto themselves. And in fact, now in SharePoint 2013, that's how you create new lists. You go to Add an App, and then your templates show up as apps that you can add. And so in this case, we're going to build a contacts list. So I'm going to choose the contacts template. Actually, we're going to call this prospects. So this is like a little mini CRM application, very, very mini. So here's our prospects list based on the contacts template. And I'm going to go up into the ribbon, click on the list tab, and I'm going to add a few columns here. So first column I'm going to add is callback. It's going to be date and time. And we'll just put in some information here, date of next scheduled contact. Of course, it would help if I could spell. Okay, and we're not going to require that this column contains information because there might not be a callback. And no default value. And everything looks pretty good there, so we'll click OK. We do want it to be date only, we don't care about the time. So I'm going to add that column. And I'll add another column. This one we'll call estimated revenue. And this is going to be currency. Estimated value of the potential sale. And this one we are going to require that user enters data, and we're going to have minimum of 0, and that should be good there. So we'll go ahead and add that column. Now I'm going to add a new column. And this one we're going to call pipeline stage. And this one's going to be a choice. So we can do, we'll see a drop-down menu later. And we'll say for description sales stage for forecasting. We are going to require it contains information. And for our choices, we'll say it's either a contact, meeting, or a proposal. And we're not going to allow fill-in choices that have to choose from the drop-down. And the default value would be the first value in the possible list of values for the drop-down. And now you can see we have our new fields added here. So I'm going to go ahead and just add some dummy data in here. And we'll put a phone number in here, business phone. And we'll just put today's date for the callback. And estimated revenue, put in 1,000, and it's a contact. And I'm just going to add one more item here. And I'm not even going to give an email address here. I'm just going to put in a business phone here for this record. Estimated revenue, we'll put in first we'll do callback. That shows up first in the list. So callback we'll put for tomorrow. And estimated revenue, we'll make that 1,000. And we'll say it's going to be a meeting. We'll save that out. So now what I want to do is show the integration, how we have this data in a list and how powerful lists are in SharePoint. It also works well with Office. So I'm going to click Connect to Outlook. And yes, I want to go ahead and allow the website to open Outlook. So we're opening Outlook right now, and yes, I want to go ahead and connect my contacts list to Outlook. And you can see here are the records that we just added in SharePoint, and now we have them in Outlook. So now we can use the Outlook functionality with the same list. And let me go ahead and edit one of these records. And let's just call it John Doe 2 for the name. We'll say OK. We'll save that. Let's go to, let's see. There we saved it. Okay, so now it's saved in Outlook. And now let's go back to our SharePoint site. and refresh that, and we should see an updated name for John Doe. In fact, we do. So now this demo kind of shows how important lists are, that because of the different service APIs, even Microsoft Office, Outlook has integration with it, Excel has integration with it. They're talking to those web services in SharePoint. That's how that happened. And so that's how we were able to get this two-way synchronization going.